Have you ever wondered where the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place? Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your host, Brian Berneman, who believes that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world. We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers. From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure to be joined all the way from Oakland in California by Chelsea Rappel. Thank you so much, Chelsea, for being here, for taking the time. And, I we reconnected a while ago, but we actually met like 12 years ago, or a little bit longer than that now, when we were living in California in the same like Buddhist retreat center. So it's a pleasure to have you here and to talk a little bit with you. So welcome. And for everybody that is watching and listening to us, what can you share about you? Who is Chelsea?
Oh, so you're just going to start with an easy question, huh,
I
Brian?
know.
Oh, well, first and foremost, I'm just really Chelsea in this moment is just very excited to get to reconnect with her old friend Brian, and who's in the future, right, in New Zealand right now, in Tuesday, and I'm when Monday. Yeah, and I'm just arriving here in my own body, and that reminds me that Chelsea is this both a personality and a collection of memories and a collection of experiences that I've had, but also this, this earth suit, this vessel, this body. Um, and I made an intention to myself when I was preparing for this podcast to be well prepared, but also to allow for flow, for co-creation between the two of us. And I'll say also my title, if you will, if you were to look on my LinkedIn or something, would be I'm a somatic practitioner. I am a really proud, grateful person in recovery who's sober from all sorts of substances, including eating disorder and including just dysfunction and trauma in general, as most of us humans are. And I'm really committed to healing and recovering and doing that out loud so that nobody else has to go through it alone or think that they're alone. And I primarily focus on how we do that through the lens of the body and embodiment and present moment awareness. I also am a mom of two bunnies that are very adorable, and they're next door. I just gave them some carrots. And yeah, I live with my hubby here, and I love rock climbing. I like dancing. I like tea and coffee. There's me in a nutshell.
Beautiful. Thanks, Charles. I often ask this question, and I know that it's a challenging one because, who are we? It's one of our biggest questions in our quest of understanding like ourselves and our path as well. And I have, through the years, answered this question in so many ways, depending, of course, on what space I'm in and what is the intention of the space. And as well, I realize, that where I have landed mostly with this question is I am an ever-evolving being. And that is, like, and it's okay. I'm unintentional about that change and allowing the idea that I have and the image, the self-image that I have of who Brian is to keep on changing and to keep on being different with, as you're
Mm.
saying, all of the memories and all of the things that I'm bringing into the space. So yeah, it's so nice to, like to embrace what's alive now as well. So um, but I would love if you would be able to share a little bit about your path. Like you're saying
Mhm.
now you're sharing this because you went through some of those addictions and your path of recovering and healing, and like that's still going. Of course, that goes for all of us that we're on this path. Um, but can you share a little bit about your path? How was it when you were younger? And what led you to actually find these different tools that now you're sharing?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I like that as well, the permission to be ever evolving beings. And I had this instinct, whoever's listening to this, to get to check in with how they're arriving, what they're bringing to the present moment. Who are they in this moment? Who are they today? And just permission to do that. And that feels really important, I think, to my particular journey, my particular lens of how I view quote unquote addiction recovery. And I guess I'll start by saying there was a really clear, distinct moment for me where I too was awakened to, oh my gosh, there's something so much bigger going on here. And I've had that thread even as a child. That was something I remember being really a part of my experience growing up in rural New Jersey in the woods. I'm the oldest of seven kids, and it was such a refuge to go outside, go into the woods, go into the fields, be in nature, and have this really clear felt sense, even though I didn't have a name for it, of being connected to something bigger, something larger. And in a nutshell, my experience growing up was mixed. I'll say it was stressful a lot of the times. And my coping strategy for that was I remember my very first experience of learning how to deal with stress because no one never taught me any other way. These are things we need to be taught, was through sugar or food. I remember recognizing I could really sort of comfort myself and did that in a lot of different ways. And it wasn't until I was much older and someone offered me other substances that I realized, oh, those things are a little more effective, a little quicker. But just in this society that we live in, we have this really normalized structure where stressed out, there's a pill for that. You deserve to have crack open an ice cold beer. You deserve to go um, enjoy a really good fried chicken dinner. Like we have all these outlets, and of course with media and streaming video and just go binge watch. TV binging is now a normalized part of how we do what we do to decompress. So it's just so normalized. It's the water we're swimming in. And I just learned, as any, you know, organism does, that if there's a way to soothe suffering, somehow I'm going to do it, because, as you and I both know as Buddhist practitioners, or at least to some extent, that part of the agreement of Earth School is that there will be suffering. And so I just engaged in those behaviors for a while. And part of the path, I think, of anyone on that journey of addiction recovery, addiction, another lens for that, or another definition of that, is just anything that I do to disconnect me from whatever I'm having a hard time dealing with. Whatever it is, it's just in a way to avoid. And so what that meant is, inside of myself, inside of this Chelsea body, there's just a lot of pain, a lot of physical pain, a lot of emotional pain, spiritual pain, just from growing up in a lot of dysfunction and just not having access to a lot of resources. And so I remember really hating my body, like from a really early age, just really disliking it, not wanting to be in it. I engaged in trigger warning, self-harming behaviors. Fast forward, I was in my early 20s, and a dear friend, Melissa, if you're listening, took me to my first yoga class. And I was the last person you might expect to go be in a yoga class, by the way. I was definitely like smoking cigarettes my whole way there and wondering when is this going to be over. But I was curious. I was definitely really curious. And it was in a gym. We walked through the gym, we got to the yoga studio, and the teacher led us through all sorts of, acrobatics like Western yoga has become. Um, and I kind of just did my best. I was not flexible, not comfortable in my skin. Everyone else seemed to know what they were doing. So I just went through the motions, but then you probably know this, and I know you lead these kind of circles at the end of the asana portion. They ask you to lie down on your back. And the teacher turned down the lights and put on this really soothing music and just invited us to rest, and lay there and just be present. No one had ever asked me to do that before. And I'll never forget that moment. Something clicked where it was the first time, maybe in my whole life, that I felt, oh, my body is a place of expansion and openness and relaxation and calm and something greater and bigger. And it has the capacity to feel, I didn't know these words yet, but for regulation and for comfort without me smoking something, drinking something, eating something. And it changed my life. It just changed my life, that moment. And from then on, that path went from who knows where I would be, complete self-destruction, to that path of seeking and finding different ways to do that, whether it's through the yoga journey, which I did do my yoga training and all of that, but through learning how to meditate, through learning about Buddhism, through now I'm studying, I've been studying somatics. And as you said earlier, I don't think it's ever done. I don't plan on being done, but that moment of coming back to my body and experiencing it no longer as a place of pain, of only pain, suffering, numbness, but also this place of great support and divinity, if you will. And it was wild. So, and I just knew I have to start seeking this and find more of that. So I think I'll pause there for now and just let us take that in a bit together.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think that a lot of times it's really important for us to share our stories and our past because it's important. Someone might hear something that they recognize themselves, or they recognize a behavior, or they realize something through us being honest and being able to be, some people would say vulnerable
Yeah.
to share, that yeah, we were struggling. And it's not that that ended, it's just we found ways through curiosity, through, as you were saying, seeking, through being able to explore and to understand like what's this, like what is actually happening within this vehicle that I'm using every single day. And as you had that with that yoga class, I had a similar thing that the first time that I went to a community Tibetan yoga class, I was like, oh wow, this is how this actually feels. I I didn't know how the body actually felt. And it was really interesting because I I was stressed out and I was, like quite anxious person and I had a lot of like driving, a lot of road rage and those kind of experiences. But I didn't realize that I was, like repressing my feelings, that I was
Yeah.
like avoiding them. Every time that I remember that my parents asked me, like, how are you? And I would always be like, I'm fine. And then my mom would, like go and it's like, really, how are you? And I'm like, I'm fine. I thought that I was fine. Like, it's
Yeah.
not that I was trying to lie to them. that was what I thought that was happening. I was just not in touch with my experience.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to this class and I was like, whoa, like this is how feelings actually feel. This is how the body, the energy that is moving in the body actually I can experience it. And I was hooked. I was like,
Yeah.
this is, you know, again, it's a journey to reconnect, to heal, to go to where there's some blockages that I was trying to avoid,
Yep.
and being like, okay, let's go into this and be with it and embrace it and massage it a little bit, and I think that through the years, like I've been now, like that was over 20 years ago, like little by little, going through different layers, going through the different parts of myself, and just understanding, as you were saying, how to self-regulate, how to be with my experience, how to not escape it all of the time, because as you're saying, this has been normalized. What is normalized is the things that we learn, and then we're just doing that. And
Yeah.
as you're saying, from one of the things that for me in the Buddhist path that I learned a lot through these years has been the understanding and compassion, both for myself and for others, because it's like I didn't know better. Why would they know better? What it is that, like these addictions or these behaviors, they're just trying to protect us. So this is,
Right.
like what I got into that space.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm just taking that in. Yeah. That's so reassuring to know you had such a similar experience and get to learn a little bit more about your origin story. And it's so true. You didn't know any better. It just, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. That's what everybody says. That's what I hear everybody say. We don't know what we don't know. And all of these strategies of avoiding are so helpful. And it's important to thank them. Thank you, whatever coping mechanisms, because you really helped me. And the process, I think, that you're naming of, wow, I have this body that's experiencing this range of sensation, this range of emotion, and not only learning how to regulate, but before I can do that, it's like learning I'm a sensual being, like sensualizing, which is the opposite of dissociating, which is where so many of us live. And I'm appreciative of dissociation. It serves a purpose. It would be too much if we didn't have that capacity, but learning to be a sensual, living, breathing being thing that has blockages, has wounds, has pain points, and has the ability to feel grounded, the ability to feel this breath in my chest, this ability to lock eyes with a friend and recognize I'm not alone. And as we say in somatic experiencing, which is a huge part of my work, we recognize the activation, we recognize the pain, the discomfort, and the resource, those little pockets or places of well being. And being able to hold both is what makes it possible to be that resilient, alive, present being.
Mm,
Um,
yeah, that's
yeah.
so beautiful. You know, I through the years, one of the things that I realized, both for myself and with a lot of the people that I have been working with, is, as you're saying, that embracing of the experience and not trying to push it away, not, like not repressing the fact that we have those activations, we have those trigger points, we have those coping mechanisms and tendencies, embracing them. And now, with the resources that we have, both innate or things that we learn as well, how do we embrace all of it, and how do we want to navigate through that? Like, what's the dance that we're going to allow in this space to, you know, eh, allow our experience in this human life that, as you're saying, there is suffering. There's things that came before. There's things that this is the world of trauma, like there's things that were there, and we allowed ourselves to survive. And now it's
Yeah.
like, do I want to go? This is a lot of times for me in my own experience. Do I want to go from survival to living life?
Yeah, I love seeing this big smile on your face right now. Just like as we say, living life. Wow. Right? Because survival is no choice. Survival is, I'm just making it. There's no other option. And living life means I have choices, I have options, and it's exciting and it's terrifying at the beginning. At the beginning, it's like, why would I go into my body? There's so many good reasons to not be present in my body. And I love what you're saying to embrace it. And I also, when I'm working with myself and clients and students, I say, hey, what if we were to start before we get to embracing, which can be, I see you are there and I am there, and I'm so grateful to be there. I'm just like dancing for joy with us. And if someone's just beginning, can I begin with at least validating or accepting? Yeah, I'm having a feeling. I'm having a feeling. I remember I was sitting with a client not too long ago and they were just naming how tired they felt. And all I did was say, "Yeah, you're really tired. Yeah, you're so tired. Let's be tired." And it was as if they had never heard this before. No one ever told them or said or reflected back, "Oh, you're having a feeling. You're having a normal human feeling." And I'm not surprised, Brian, that your experience all the time was, I'm fine," because that's so many of us are told. We have to appear fine. You have to be the good student and sit up straight and do your best and get straight A's. And there's a real Western way of just do good, be okay. And that was my experience a lot of the times growing up because there was a lot of suffering in my family growing up. There were a lot of people who were not doing okay or feeling okay. And often I felt like there was only the meaning that my brain made up was, oh, other people are so not okay. I better make myself okay so that they don't feel there's extra burden on them.
Mm.
And so my, brain and my nervous system made those connections of just be okay at all costs, manage your discomfort any way you can, and then present this image. So it's a long-winded way of saying, if no one gets anything else from this podcast, just to be able to say, I am feeling feelings in my body. And that means that I'm alive. That means that I'm a person. That means that I'm human. That means that I'm here.
Mm.
And that is real. And I get to have that experience. And I think if people start with that, it's going to open up this journey towards embracing and really fully living.
Mm. Yes, yes, I love that. I think that it's when we're able to be with the experience without judging it, without like labeling it. Sometimes it supports us, sometimes we need to go beyond it, but to just be, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. And, and as you're saying, to have someone else as well sitting with us on that, it's so important because, as you're saying, we live in relation to those around us. And whether we understand that consciously or unconsciously, we are seeing and assuming and creating meaning out of things. And then again, for different mechanisms, we decide, as you said, like, I'm going to be okay so that I'm not a burden. Different people will make a different realization there. But from that place of being around others and belonging and being able to understand, okay, like I need to be validated by them, or I need to, uh, I care what they say, which is a big part of our society.
Yeah.
Then it's being able to have someone meeting you where you are. I think that this is one of the biggest things through the years that as a therapist, a holistic therapist, I have been told a lot of times, like, you're just allowing me to be. And I'm like, well, that's my role. Like
Yeah.
that's, I tell a lot of times to people as a therapist, I'm not there to heal anyone. I'm not there to fix anyone. One thing, they are not broken. And we need to get to that place as well in our own experience that we are not broken. But as well, we are our own healers. And we have the resources, as you said earlier, to be able to do that. We just need sometimes someone to allow us to do that, to guide us back into our resources, to be able to recognize that, like it's okay, whatever it is that you're experiencing, and to
Yeah.
just be with us and to hold our hands and walk with us. And I think that that is one of the things that I keep on telling people. It's like, I'm just going to be there for you. And now
Mhm.
you are the one that is going to do everything.
Wow. What important work, Brian, that you're doing. Just
Likewise.
so important. It's like, it's what was so often missing. We're bringing in these pieces that were missing
Mm,
long ago. And gosh, there's so many people, and myself included, who just didn't have that experience. Saying, oh, you're just going to be here with me and you're not going to judge me. And you're also going to encourage me and say that I can do it. And also that you'll hold my hand and guide me when I have questions. And what a gift.
mm,
It's so needed. And before anybody can learn how to do this for themselves, it had to be modeled, it had to be learned. It's a skill set. And how great that we can learn new skills. How great that we can have new experiences and we're not as stuck as we might think we are. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, definitely. I would love, Charles, since you're doing both, like this has been part of your path, but you're supporting people through their recovery process, and reconnecting with themselves and with those tendencies that they have. Um, for anybody that is, like perhaps at this moment listening, that is struggling with that. I mean, we're all struggling in some way or another with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, you mentioned before that just allowing, like validating the experience. Um, what are some of the things that you notice or that you can share that support people when they are in the midst of perhaps a very unhelpful coping mechanism?
Mm, yeah. Well, just first and foremost, my heart goes out to you, my friend. You are not alone in that. And wow, what if we could just allow ourselves to be right there and to know that there are so many people struggling doing this behavior that I don't want to be doing, yet I can't stop doing it. And such a painful place to be. And I want to validate first and foremost that, just like we were alluding to earlier, Brian, that this pattern of, let's just call it addiction as a blanket statement. I know not everyone identifies with that word, but use this addiction has been what made it possible to survive. what would otherwise be such intolerable discomfort and pain. I was in a 12-step meeting once where someone said my addiction was my best attempt at self care. It was misguided, it was unsustainable, but it was my best attempt. So I see you trying to take care of yourself, person out there who's struggling. And I know you know there's a different way. And, so I can certainly point people to different resources. And maybe I can note that a little bit later. But first and foremost, I think in the so many different recovery spaces, including 12-step recovery, which I benefit from, I participate in, and it's a wonderful resource because it's free, it's accessible. And there is this in step one of the 12 steps, we step one is just admitting I'm having an issue and I need help. And I remember for me, that was such a vulnerable place to get to and a game changer to say to whoever it is, whether it's your therapist or whether it's to a friend that you trust or whether it's to your doctor, to say, I'm struggling and I could use some help. It's a power tool.
Mm.
It's a power tool to admit to ourselves and then to say to someone else, like, help, I'm struggling. I don't want to live this way. And that changed my life profoundly. And then I was able to get resources. I was able to get more information. If anyone wants, on my website, awakenedrecovery.com/, I think it's resources or recovery resources. I'm sure we could get people that information somehow. There's a list, a long list of different meetings, whether it's 12-step meetings or non-12-step meetings, that people can go to those web pages and there are meetings happening. There's probably 100 meetings happening right now on Zoom and online and in person. Because once I say I need help, we can be connected to those resources, like you said. And then whether we talk to a therapist or go to a meeting or talk to a friend, especially if we're going into a space where other people have had that experience, which is why I love meetings of all kinds, whether they're my meetings or some other meeting, where you can hear other people who are also struggling with that same issue. And that profound sense of not being alone anymore, even if I don't even talk in that meeting, but I'm just listening to other people tell my story, validating, encouraging.
Mm.
I'm actually at a loss for words right now because I'm remembering how powerful it was for me. And then the world just opens up from there. And then the amount of resources that are available are just endless. But I would start with number one, validating, like, wow, this is a pattern that's really kept me safe. Thank you, pattern. And now there's a part of me that wants to live, to thrive, to have other options. So I need help. I can't do this alone.
Mm.
We're not meant to do this alone.
Yeah.
I know I can't do it alone. So I'm just going to leave it with that beginning piece
Mm.
because for a lot of folks, that's a lot.
Yeah. And I think that what you just mentioned at the very end as well, like we're not supposed to do this alone as well. How, like how we get to, again, we learn this behavior, not be a burden to others. I need to do this by myself. Like I need to actually do this. And it's like, yes. And also, there can be others supporting us. There can be others that show us and model to us what it's like to behave differently, to do things differently. And I think that this is one of the reasons why, for me, the different combination of the outer resources that I've been able to tap into that allow my inner resources to meet them there. I think that has been so powerful through understanding, okay, the mind works in this way, the body in this way, the emotions in this way, trauma, it's like this, energy is like this, and to be able to understand again, we're all different. We all need different entry points. We are all going to resonate with something different. And I think that this is one of the reasons why, for me, the journey through the body has been so important because as I work with my mind, when I was younger, I was just working with my mind. That was it. I was trying with my mind to sort out everything. And then when I got introduced to my body again and I reconnected, I'm like, oh, okay, this is a beautiful way and a beautiful perspective to work through what I've been holding to experience the experience that I was trying to avoid. And it doesn't matter if I understand it or not. I think that this is one of the biggest things with working through the body. It's sometimes I understand what I just did and what I moved, and sometimes I'm like, well, I don't know what I just did, but something definitely moved, and I'm grateful for it.
Yes, I'm so glad you named that. Those and you mentioned a few different things, the mind and the body and our sensory perceptions and our energy and all of these different branches of experience. But for simplification purposes, let's just say we've got a mind and we've got a body, or I have a personality and a story, in my mind, and then I have this body. And in somatic experiencing, again, which is just one of my favorite models, which is a Peter Levine modality, we the in a nutshell, I think I'm saying nutshell so many times in this interview, but it's tracking. I'm trying to build that awareness that I have a mind and I have a body. And they are not always wanting the same thing and they're not always experiencing the same thing. And sometimes they will conflict. But can I bring them to the table? Can I allow them both to coexist? Because like you said, my your brain might be telling you, I don't like this. I have this whole history and this story of people are not there for me. People are not to be trusted. People cannot be they're I'm just going to be a burden. We have all of these stories and all of this meaning making, which at some point really served us. And I brought all of that to my first recovery meeting, all those years ago. And I also had this body that had its own story. And if I learn how to listen to my body, the story in my body as I sat in that meeting was extreme relief. I'm sure I was just exhaling like crazy. I'm sure I was just taking lots of breath. I'm sure my muscles that were so clenched my whole life were starting to melt and relax because I was finally sitting in a room with other people like me saying, help, we can do this. And if I had only been listening to my brain with all those stories, I would be like, these people can't be trusted. They don't really want me here. They don't have time for me, which all of that comes with me. And my body was just like, oh, this is like, I'm finally able to rest and relax and breathe. And that is an experience of safety, of profound safety that I really needed.
Mhm.
And so I'm so glad you brought up the mind body duality. And the body has its own story. And learning how to listen to that story is what somatics is all about. And yeah, my body holds a lot of pain and blockages and wounds. And wow, when that person just shared their story, my shoulders finally released from my ears and my body said, thank you, more please. So
Mhm.
again, learning how to feel into the trigger and the resource. And the resource is what's going to bring about that healing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that which you just mentioned about safety and softening as well into the experience. This is
Yeah.
through the body. If we are able to find that sense of safety, then those inner resources that we have can kick in because then we allow, whether we know what we're doing or not, the body, as you're saying, starts to soften by itself. And it's like, ah, like the breath can actually, allow the body to expand. And it's like, ah. I'm moving, and this is a little bit softer, and I'm not
Yeah.
holding as much. And I think this is so important. And this is why we need some of these spaces, and we need sometimes people modeling what that feels like, what that's like. And to know, we all had different experiences. I had different addictions or behaviors than you or others. And sometimes when people can recognize, like, they experienced this and now they are feeling a little bit more relaxed. They are at ease. They are embracing their experience. I don't need to be there tomorrow, but I know that this is possible. And to be able to hold that, I think that it's so important. And this is why, again, like, I love working with the body. It's interesting. A lot of times when I teach at university, a lot of the work is, like, understanding the mind and understanding, like, how to work with the mind, and it's more from a neuroscience perspective, and it's more, more um just working with that part. And then at some point during the semester, I'm like, okay, let's go now down into the bodies and let's understand how that also is part of our experience and how the mind sometimes doesn't know what it doesn't know. And the body's keeping a score and it's taken with us all of these, things that we've been holding. And suddenly it's like, I can breathe. I
Mm.
can then be with it. Yes, it, like, again, as you're saying, there can be activations, there can be triggers, there can be different things that we notice, and it's not like we're going to go into the feeling of that suffering or that pain and know, I have the capacity to be with that and to
Yeah.
be able to explore those different perspectives. Because a lot of times, like, it's interesting in my own experience how I needed to learn, and this is one of the ways that I shared. I shared this as a separate thing. It's all one. It's all our experience. Yet the mind and the body seems like it's two different worlds a lot of times that we need to learn about them separately to then be able to align them and to bring them into balance.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah. And the body is extremely undervalued. Except for maybe a physical education class in school growing up, there was no, or a really awkward sexual education class. There was no, wow, let's appreciate our body. Let's really get curious about what our body wants to do. It was not even a conversation. So it's no, it's of course going to be something we're going to have to befriend and explore on its own and then come back, and I'm glad you mentioned that because it was why it was so important for me to start doing these resilient recovery circles in my community because as I mentioned earlier, such a fan of the 12-step program. And it was so cognitive based. It was so based on understanding and the story and what's your story and so valid, so valuable. And then if I'm just telling my story over and over again and I'm not including the body, I'm really missing something. And it's been beautiful. We just had our resilient circle on this past Friday, and I was getting some feedback from someone who attended. And it's kind of funny because I come into these circles with a plan and I have what I'm teaching about and I have the exercise I'm teaching and I'm so excited about what I'm offering. And I got some feedback from this person who attended and they said, Chelsea, just to be asked in a meeting space, what does my body need right now? Does your body want to lie down? Does your body want to sit in a chair? Does your body want to move and shake? Does your body want to cry? Just to be asked that question and then reminded of that many times throughout the meeting is profound.
Mm.
And this person was also saying they came in with this headache after work. and they noticed getting very kind of, in their head in a story about, well, I can't really enjoy this circle because I have this headache and I need to get rid of this headache so I can really do what I'm supposed to be doing, which is getting in my body. And then they realized, oh, this headache is part of my body. It's part of my experience. What if I don't have to do, like you said, Brian, push it away or ignore it? What if I can validate it and do what I need to do in my body to take care? And it was so beautiful. They grabbed a cushion off the shelf and a pillow, and they like put their head in the pillow, and they took some breaths, and they just watched the headache not disappear, but become more tolerable, more manageable. They were taking care of themselves. All this to say, sometimes because the body was so excluded from any conversation anywhere in my education growing up, unless it was about, how fast could I run a mile in gym class, because it was so excluded, these questions you and I are asking or naming of like, what does your body need? Can you notice that I'm here with you and our bodies are here right now? These questions are mind blowing. Noticing my body's holding a lot of tension right now and I could soften it 5% is profound.
Mm.
And I'm just so grateful for this field of somatics emerging and becoming more normalized and being like, hey, there is a lot more of me from the neck down that would like to be included in this process, please. And because of finding these resources in my body, it means I do get to build that physiological capacity to be with discomfort, to be with triggers. Notice that I can get through a triggering situation without numbing out or shutting down or becoming so overwhelmed.
Mm.
I can actually get through it. Is so hopeful, but you have to include the body.
Mm.
The body must be included.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Mm.
cool, so exciting to talk about this with you.
And I think that through that understanding, as you're saying, we can, this is one of the things that I mentioned a lot of times. When we're able to be in a situation that we are able to be in our bodies and feel it, feel what's being activated, we can then, instead of reacting unconsciously with through our patterns, we can choose how we want to respond. We can either take some time and be like, I need a minute, I need 3 minutes, or we can allow ourselves to be like, this is happening. And even we can, in a conversation, we can even mention, this is what's happening. I'm feeling activated in this way
Yeah,
to, again, validate the experience and to not react in whatever tendency we have to react for the communication or the relationship or whatever circumstance we are in, to be with it and to, well, just acknowledge what's going on and acknowledge that, as well, there's a different way of being with this. I don't need to like react and I don't need to escalate situations, and I can allow both my experience and your experience and be like, okay, this is what's going on. But it's
yeah,
so important to be able to include the body, because as well, the mind changes as the body changes. As you were
right,
saying, when we create like the space and we allow energy to move, when we are able to massage that pain and we are able to create something different within our body, then the signals to the brain change, and the brain starts to also create new neural pathways. Therefore, the way that we see things, the way that we experience things, the everything starts to shift. And it's that, like we can do that through the mind and we can do that through the body. And there's like space for working with the mind, there's space for working with the body. We need to embrace both. But as you're saying,
right.
our society hasn't allowed us or hasn't showed us how to do that.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm,
That's right. Thanks for bringing that in. And thanks for bringing that relational piece in.
mm,
I think that's the reason I'm still married today. The capacity to be like, I need to pause right now. Both of us, we practice like, we're very activated right now. Let's pause. Let's take a break. Let's slow down has been huge. And that's such an important part of recovery. What also builds capacity, as we're talking about this ability to hold discomfort, not just tolerate it, it's very different, actually have space for it, is learning how to slow down, learning how to rest, learning how to just do a little bit. Again, something our society does not value. We value hyper productivity and multitasking. And now, everywhere I look, every time I turn on a new YouTube video, they're advertising this new AI product that can help me multitask even better. And just this slower rhythm of the body. The body invites us into the slower rhythm. It invites us into presence. And I would also say, what I'm hearing you say is this developing this mindfulness piece, right? Really starting to notice all of this experience is key. I tell people who are afraid, a lot of my client students who come to see me, they're so triggered even just with the idea of coming into their body. And I say, of course you are. How normal that is. Let's start with mindfulness. Let's start with just noticing, oh, I'm feeling triggered. Okay, great. Let's start there and be with that. And one thing I love about recovering from any addiction in a somatic way is that we get to step back from the pattern of the addiction, from the pattern of being in the survival, the fight, flight, freeze state, which is different than other recovery spaces where we identify, hi, my name is Chelsea and I'm an addict or I'm an alcoholic. Because I think that can really be a detriment to a lot of people. And I know a lot of folks need that. It has value. I must admit, I probably needed it a little bit at the beginning to remind myself, like, just like if I were to say I have diabetes, I have to remember to take my medicine every day. This is not something that's going to just go away. All that to say, I think sometimes in recovery spaces, we can take on the identity of the addict, which I think also prevents folks from getting help or seeking help or support because there's so much shame that is coupled with that label in
Mm,
our culture, in our society. I mean, there's a whole drug war and it's just getting worse and worse.
mm,
So if I can start to recognize through mindfulness, I am not an addict. I am a person, a vibrant being with many different experiences, many of which I do not understand because it's such a part of the mystery. I am a human being person that has this pattern running in my system because at some point, probably generations way back through all sorts of trauma, served a function, served a purpose for creating whatever little bit of safety was possible where no other safety was available. So creating that space to disidentify and say, I am not an addict. I'm a person who is recovering. I'm a person who struggles with this pattern. And that little bit of space is where I think we can insert, as we started the conversation, some compassion,
mm,
some grace for ourselves.
mm. Yeah.
So it's not me in this like dark shame corner, in these dark church basements trying to get recovery. And that's why it's so important for me to do this out loud. And it was so important for me to start resilient recovery where we get into spaces with nice lighting and comfortable cushions and like bring it into the culture, into the zeitgeist and say, there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing
Mm,
wrong with you.
mm,
You are a beautiful person who was doing your best with what you had. And now let's get curious about another way to do that
mm,
that is more expansive and more alive and supportive.
mm. Beautiful. As you're saying that, I'm reminded of one of my clients that once came, and this was this lady that she was in her 60s, and she came and she said that she was an addict. And she told me that she has been sober for 40 years.
Yeah.
And that, what you were saying of the identification of that, I was like, wait, you haven't had a drink in 40 years, yet you think that you are that. And I was like just trying to unravel the identification that she was holding with that, which if she actually stopped for a moment, for 40 years, she hasn't had that behavior. Perhaps the identification supported that. It's not
Yeah.
that it doesn't
Yes.
have a place.
Yes.
But as you're saying, like, I do believe that a lot of times with this great up until some point, because then we are just over identifying as that instead of allowing, okay, that's part of the experience, or is there another way to talk about myself or the self-image that I'm carrying
Yeah.
that allows me to shift into the, okay, yes, that was my behavior, and perhaps there's some remnants of that there that if I don't hold this, then I might go back into it. But just, how we are talking about ourselves and how we are seeing ourselves,
Yeah.
sometimes it helps to change that inner dialogue.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate what you're saying. It has a function. And I'm not telling anybody how to identify or how to define their recovery. And if I spend my lifetime only identifying as the hardest part of my life, like this was the hardest, darkest, most painful part of me, and now it is my whole identity, there's a reverberation of that. There's a quality of that I hold in my nervous system. A lot of us in the resilient community, we say, I'm recovering or I'm a person in recovery. And it makes room for the expansive quality, for the ever evolving. And I'll include myself. I've had lapses and relapses and back and forth and that's part of it. And I'm so grateful for that. And it never stopped me from being like, well, now all is lost and I have to go back to the drawing board. It's like I get to continue. I get to learn whatever teachings or lessons were there for me and integrate them and move forward.
Mm,
And it's a part of me and I never want to forget that.
mm,
And especially because it means that other people know that they're not alone.
mm,
And also, there's so much more to me. There's just so much more to me that is important and meaningful and resourcing.
mm.
And congratulations to your client on 40 years. That's huge. That's a big deal. That's amazing. I celebrate that.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
think it's that just as you're saying, holding everything. It's being able to hold all of that and be like, yeah, this
Yeah.
supports. Also, is there another way? And just to be able to allow all of that. So beautiful. Charles, I'm aware of our time and I want to honor your time. And I could talk with you for hours and hours and hours. I'm just going to invite you if there's something that you would love for people to know, like that perhaps you have mentioned it already, or perhaps that you haven't mentioned, like what's that one thing that you wish, like everybody knew?
Hmm. You are enough. You are enough just the way you are. I think it was Liz Gilbert. She's a great resource. If people don't know about this resource, it's called Letters from Love. And every week on her Substack, she reads a new letter from unconditional love, which anyone in the 12-step community knows that connection with our higher power is really important. And her higher power is unconditional love. So it's a great resource. But she says something like, when she talks to her higher power, her, God, the universe, love, it always tells her the same thing, which is, you are loved and I am right here with you.
Mm,
And I think if all of us knew that, even just 1%, like could feel that, I think we'd be on a very different planet.
mm,
And, as Liz says, we're perfect just the way you are. And there's room for improvement, right? There's always room for growth. There's always room for change. Um, yeah,
mm.
yeah. And
Beautiful.
nervous system education. Nervous system education. Educate yourself about your nervous system, which is what I mean when I say the body. What is it doing? What is its function? how do you learn to work with it rather than against it? I think one of my favorite people who offers a lot of free teachings and videos on this. Her name is Irene Lyon, Lyon. And she, if you search her on YouTube, you're going to get so much information about your nervous system and feel so empowered, right? Knowledge is power. And so you are enough, you are loved, you're not alone. And we can empower ourselves to change and be more alive, like you said,
Mm.
Brian.
Mm, beautiful. Thanks, Charles, for that. And for everybody that has been listening and watching this conversation, if you resonated with Chelsea, if you heard something that perhaps was interested and you would want to learn more, where can they find you, Charles?
Oh, they can find me. I'm sure they could Google me, but so my website is Awakened Recovery. So awakened, Awakened, recovery, one word.com. And you can learn more about our resilient recovery circles that meet gosh, if you're in New Zealand, so we discovered you're 19 hours ahead of me. I think that would be on Saturdays at 2 p.m. or something, but you can join us there. You can also work with me individually. I have a somatic therapy practice virtually and in person. And I also have a lot of free resources. There's a lot of free stuff and recordings and meditations and practices on my site. You can also find me at Somatic Addict at on Instagram, so you can be my buddy there, and we can connect. And yeah, if you just want to say, "Hey, I'm in recovery too," and I always love to hear from folks and hear what you're doing and how we can support each other because we're not alone. You know?
Mm. Yes,
Yeah.
beautiful. I'll put all of the links on the show notes so that everybody can find it easily. So for everybody, again, listening, go check it out if you're resonating with Chelsea, if this is something that you'd like to explore a little bit more. If you heard something that you'd like to share or to know more or to share your experience, whatever it is that you're finding this conversation, go ahead and leave a comment. We always love the conversation to keep on going. But so lovely, Chelsea, to be able
Mm.
to reconnect once again and to have this space and to be able to share, some insights into our own experiences and the human experience as well. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
taking the time.
Thank you, Brian, for what you do. It's just a delight to get to be in your presence again and your offerings to the world. And thank you for your time and your attention.
Mm, thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank
Hmm.
you. Likewise, likewise. Thank you everyone as well for being here, for listening, for watching, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using hashtag conscious action and tagging at conscious action NZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.